Hosni Mubarak, who tolerated the tiny and the toothless opposition of liberal intellectuals whose vain electoral campaigns created the facade of a democratic process. And this of course, to talk about such a big and a huge incident is Dr. Muhammad Fahmy, the member of the political office of Egypt, the Freedom Party. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Well, Muhammad, it's a great pleasure to have you with us at Nile Cruise. And this segment, we really want to shed some light. You look quite young. You have political participation, and we wanted to shed some light about the youth participation in the political life in Egypt, especially ever since the January 25th last year uprising. Things have changed for youth. Their participation in politics has been extensive. If you can shed a little bit of light on this issue.
Yes. First off, I think it's a very good idea to talk about participation in youth, really, because this is the key word, Chief, here. Whenever we're thinking of youth, especially in the pre-Mubarak, in the pre-revolution era, one of the main problems was that participation was not really happening for the youth. And we're talking about so many levels here, not just political participation, economic participation, social participation, cultural participation. So all of these aspects were very important, and were actually some of the main reasons why the youth took a very active role in the movement that led to the demise of the Mubarak regime. What we saw during the period, the 18-day period that brought down Mubarak and his regime, and then afterwards, was really an upsurge in the levels of participation all over the place. Social movements were created, political parties were being established. The youth in general felt that they're taking now matters into their own hands. The problem is this sort of movement, or this spirit, did not last for quite long. And then after that, day after day, week after week, you start seeing that this sort of enthusiasm, participation is really decreasing. And this is a big problem. I think it's one of the main problems that need to be addressed and solved today.
And the upsurge is due to maybe the sense of ownership because there has been a gap where youth were not really participating in the political life. We did not really see them in political parties or factions, but now they're actively participating. The first question is the reason behind this high level of participation, and the other one, how deeply they are participating.
Yes, I think definitely there was a sense of ownership. One of the key words in Egypt and in lots of other countries in the Arab world is something that's now described as the youth bulge. The youth bulge refers to the existence of an amazing number, huge number of youthful population. Yes. And this youth population can be an asset or a predicament. It can be a bonus or a minus, depending on how you make use of this youthful population. If you look at most of the successful examples of development all over the world, whether in Brazil, in Turkey, and even South Asia, all of these countries were quite successful in engaging these youthful segments of the society, creating jobs, increasing the sense of ownership, making them part and parcel of the political and the social process. A lot of those that took part in the January 25th uprising were very interested, they felt that with this movement now there will be a role for the youth in what's happening in the country, that they will start playing active roles socially and politically. And with time, as we're seeing now, this kind of conviction or hope has been decreasing because of the fact it's a double-folded process, really. It's not just these movements or parties that were not very successful in linking with these youthful segments, but also the youth themselves at times were not really eager enough or having the ability to withstand this process, because it's a long process, and you have to be very persistent, you have to have patience, you have to have the knowledge that change will not occur overnight. You have
Muhammad,
to,
as you said, the young men and young women who participated in the January 25th revolution had an image back then of enthusiasm and maybe big plans and big hopes for the future. Did this maybe image change right now, 2 years after the revolution now?
I think it did, and as I was just saying, this sort of disillusion happened because there was no, again, participation. Again, the key word, ownership during the days of the uprising
from the youth themselves.
From the youth in these different venues, whether political venues or social venues. The representation of the youth right now. If you look, for example, at the current Constitutional Assembly. You know, when you look at the representation of youth and the youthful segments or movements in this assembly, you'll find that it's quite weak, really very negligible. When you look at the main political parties and the ministers and, you know, the key sort of decision making.
But whose fault is that? Whose fault is that?
It's a double-edged thing. So we can only blame these entities
For not choosing young men and young women?
Choosing or not helping, creating venues that will allow those young people to take part in these processes. But at the same time, lack of experience, lack of knowledge, awareness made the youth at times not having the persistence or the patience.
Or maybe the qualifications even to be in parties or in the Constitutional Assembly.
Well, with regard to the qualifications, I'm not really. I think there's a lot of qualified youth in this country that are not really being utilized. When you look at the, you know, different experiences, the educational backgrounds, the awareness among a lot of the people, really, especially the youthful segments. You know, 60% of the population of this country is under 30 years, which is a huge segment. You know, this is a huge population that should be capitalized upon. And definitely within this sort of population, there are a lot of resources and expertise that should be utilized.
How are the youth performing within your political party, and how do you see their representation within the party itself?
Okay. Egypt Freedom is, relatively speaking, a small party, so we're not. We're focusing on certain areas and certain governorates. So for the most part, we exist in places like, of course, Cairo, an urban center, Alexandria, but we also exist in other places in Upper Egypt, like for instance, Asyut. We do have a sizable representation there. We also have offices in other places in Sharqiya, in Gharbiya, in Mulufaya, also in the Delta. For the most part, the active cadres in the party are youthful members, really. Most of the members are, you know, belong to the category between, you know, 25 to 40 years. One of the also very active sections or segments in the party was the student movement within the party. So we do have representation in the student movement, which has been quite active in the past few days in the attempts to amend the charter that was put forward by the ministry and by the student union existing in Cairo University and other universities all over the country. So we see the importance of the role of the youth really in these different aspects. However, again, you know, economies of scale speak, and as a relatively small party, we tend to focus on certain areas really, because expansion into, you know, a lot of areas, a lot of segments, when you don't have sufficient resources, financial and human, I believe would lead in the end to problems. So we would try as much as possible to focus on certain areas
in order
and
to
sectors.
have more impact and effectiveness.
Exactly.
So in your opinion, what are maybe the most remarkable attempts from the youth to regain their rights after the revolution, or maybe claim their rights after the revolution?
I think we've seen, you know, over the past year or so, attempts that were pretty much anecdotal. You know, they're not really linked in one big movement. So you find, for instance, in certain
just individual
or small groups, you know, on certain scales. Like over the past, for instance, week, you know, you've seen what I believe to be a very good move from a lot of youthful members of social movements and other movements, moving, for instance, towards the Gaza Strip and trying to enter there and show solidarity with the Palestinians. And they did succeed in entering Gaza.
But what about the recent Mohammed Mahmoud clashes? What do you think about that?
That's a different thing. I mean, you were wondering about the positive features.
But
the positive features
of course the clashes also include a number of young people.
Of course. Now, the Mohammed Mahmoud incidents, I think they do deserve a lot of scrutiny and a lot of careful investigation, really. I think a lot of the facts are not there. On the one hand, we're seeing confrontations with the police forces, and this is a thing that we've gone over before, and we need to get rid of, really, because the country really cannot take any more turmoil and confrontation and so forth. But on the other hand, we also get reports, you know, about police brutality and excessive use of force, and again, the same old stories we used to hear before about the harsh dealings of the police with the people. So it's again, and there's a lot of stories that come, you know, on Twitter, on Facebook, on even videos that you see everywhere. The picture is not very clear. What I can say now is that I think there needs to be an immediate, really, cease of any kind of clashes. These clashes or any similar clashes between the state authorities, the police, and the youth, because there are other areas that really this energy needs to be channeled into. I think it was very important and still very important for the youth to express their viewpoints and to be part of the street movement and even
maybe.
commemorate, that these events all came because the youth were trying to commemorate the events of Mohammed Mahmoud last year with peaceful demonstrations, with marches that would go all over the country. And I think the idea, the concept is very positive. However, when it comes to the confrontation with the police, it was really unneeded. But yet again, if the escalation came from the side of the police or not, we don't have sufficient information just yet. But if this happened, then again a lot of blame also has to be put on those that instigated or started this kind of violence.
Yes.
Right, Mohammed, allow me to make this jump from politics to sports, which
Sure.
is the interesting part to many, and I believe you also have a lot of views regarding sports. We had throughout this week, there was a great achievement by Cairo's Ahli Club, where they managed to win their 7th title for the African Champions League. And that was a win that deserved a lot of applause to the Egyptian team, where they managed to win on the playground of Tunisia's Esperance. So if you can shed some light, maybe switching gears from politics and youth towards something that also youth used to be interested in.
Yes, I think still interested in.
Of course,
we've seen that people were really. I think it was first off a very important really victory, because it came at a time in which things were very, very difficult for all Egyptians really. So it's the simplest thing that was said by most people is that this gave us a smile that was much needed at the time. It came at a time when the Gaza strikes were happening, a Suit accident happened, and things in the country overall were really very frustrating, to put it simply. So it was important on the positive side, on the psychological sort of morale for the people, to have this kind of victory or success. So all credit has to be given definitely for the players, the staff, the administration, everybody that was really capable of first off overcoming a difficulty, because the result in Alexandria was quite difficult. Again, a draw with Esperance here in Alexandria, and the idea, the thoughts about playing against them in Tunisia, and all the difficulties and all the lack of preparation. There's no local tournament or championship going on here, so of course all of these things made it look like a mission impossible, so to speak. Honestly, I was not that. Of course, I was hopeful, but I think a lot of other people as well were not really expecting much from the match. But it was a very positive surprise that the players and everybody that was involved were really capable of turning these very difficult events, the tragedy of Port Said and those martyrs that died, into some positive sort of energy really that made them capable of overcoming this obstacle. In terms of performance,
was that win for the Egyptian sports in general, especially after you've mentioned the Port Said massacre in February, where 72 or 74 Al-Ahli supporters were died or killed brutally. So how important was that win for Al-Ahli and the football of Egypt and the Egyptian sports in general?
It was very, very important. I think it came, as we were saying, in a much needed time. It also, I think, showed something that a lot of Egyptians, a lot of people talk about, maybe in a funny way, saying that that the Egyptians only show in difficult times or in hard times, when things are very harsh and there is no, as they say, light at the end of the tunnel. You start seeing the real and the true essence of Egyptians. But I think this is really quite true when you look, even historically speaking, even within the sports sector. Whenever things were very, very difficult and seemed very dull and there was no hope, that's when the most admirable really achievements were done. So I think it does prove this, and it really shows that it is possible. For again, this is a sample of a group of Egyptians. Whether the players again or the staff or the administration, and those people do represent Egyptians, and they succeeded in achieving this in a very, very difficult time.
Mohammed Fahmy, the member of the Political Office of Egypt, the Freedom Party, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thanks very much. My pleasure. Thank you.
Now it's time for a quick break, and we'll be right back again with Nile Cruise, so stay tuned.